I'm Default Professor, and welcome to the first of a series I'd like to call Electives, where we'll take an in-depth look at video games, history, culture, literature, politics, and the intersection of all those things in one tidy 6 to 8 minute YouTube video at a time. The first in this series is the politics of Star Wars, where we'll be looking at where the politics from a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away collide with our very own politics. And of course, if you like what you see and hear and want to see more of it, hit the like button and be sure to subscribe with the bell below. Let's get to it. The original Star Wars came out in 1977. That's 42 years ago. And since then, while the battle continues among the stars, so too does it brew in our own body politic. That's because Star Wars is a deeply political franchise. It is the struggle against tyranny. It is the struggle and story of rebellion and resistance. It is the rise and fall and rise again of an empire. Science fiction and fantasy are known for parables and allegory to contemporary politics, no matter where those politics take place. George Lucas, in an interview, said of the impetus for Star Wars in the 1970s, it was really about the Vietnam War. And that was the period where Nixon was running for a second term, which got me thinking historically about how do democracies get turned into dictatorships? Because the democracies aren't overthrown, they're given away. Of course, both sides of the American political spectrum have seen themselves in the struggle of rebellion. Who doesn't want to see themselves as the hero? Reagan called the Soviet Union the evil empire in a 1983 speech to the National Association of Evangelicals, before walking it back 5 years later. This was an obvious identification with the resistance, with the rebels in this case. During the Iraq War after 9/11, Maureen Dowd of the New York Times called Vice President Dick Cheney Darth Vader, to which George Lucas corrected Dowd, saying that Anakin Skywalker was a promising young man that was led astray by the dark side. In fact, Cheney is Palpatine. George W. is Darth Vader. By identifying the evil empire and the emperor of that empire, Dowd had identified with the other side. Star Wars has had an obvious cultural effect, spanning 3 trilogies, 2 standalone films, and many upcoming series, but it has also impacted how we understand ourselves politically.
You saw the Empire's weakness and refused to let it consume you. It makes you stronger.
This series is going to look at the politics of Star Wars through the lens of Star Wars Battlefront 2 from EA, where Iden Versio, a commander in an elite stormtrooper squad, comes to understand what the Empire is really all about. We will also take a look at American politics through the lens of Timothy Snyder's On Tyranny. Through both of these mediums, the goal is to understand Lucas's main point, that democracies are not overthrown, they're given away, and what we can do about it.
How are we supposed to fight that?
The Empire will change, just like it did when they destroyed the first Death Star. We adapt or die.
So how does this help us understand our own political, social, and cultural landscape? The first chapter from Snyder's On Tyranny we will look at is Chapter 2, which is Defend Institutions. He says, "It is institutions that help us preserve our decency. They need our help as well. Do not speak of our institutions unless you make yours by acting on their behalf." But what is an institution? General wisdom on the subject gets murky, but technically speaking, an institution is any organization in a government which creates, enforces, or applies laws. Our institutions are codified in the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, the court system, our education system, our freedoms of press and religion, and so on, but they are not invulnerable. In 6 of the 9 Star Wars films, there are no institutions of which to speak. The Empire, then the First Order, dominates politics. There is no voting, there are no courts, there is no religion except to the military-industrial complex. Education is largely to fulfill military goals. The only laws are the ones in which the Empire enforces through brute military force. At one point, there was a galactic senate, if you can remember the second trilogy, or episodes 1, 2, and 3. There was a Jedi Temple. There was a Jedi Academy. Once the Empire and Emperor Palpatine take control, though, these things disappear. Goodbye rights. Goodbye freedom. Snyder tells us institutions do not protect themselves. They fall one after the other unless each is defended from the beginning. So choose an institution you care about, a court, a newspaper, a law, a labor union, and take its side. As of the making of this video, many of our institutions are under threat. The freedom to practice certain religions has been challenged. The Constitution also gives us freedom from religion, should we choose. But religious special interest groups have undue sway on the direction of policy and law. The cost of college is too expensive for many, and most that graduate have 5 and 6 figures of debt on graduation, which limits opportunity and access. And while college is getting more expensive, our public schools are in competition with charter schools and other for-profit education ventures, another potential threat to equity and access if left unchecked. And of course, the president has called the press the enemy of the people. Lest I be called an enemy of the people, countries around the world are also taking away freedoms of their citizens. In China, Uyghur Muslims are being shipped off to concentration camps for what the Chinese are calling re-education. Right next door, violent suppression of democratic movements in Hong Kong have brought attention to the fragility of the promise of democracy without institutions to protect those promises. In Venezuela, the High Court, a proxy of an authoritarian government, dissolved the National Assembly or their Congress to consolidate power. And currently, the military and government of Myanmar is committing genocide against Rohingya Muslims who are fleeing to nearby nations like Bangladesh. Without protection and vigilance, we fall victim to one of the myths of history, that it simply repeats. Snyder says history doesn't repeat, but it does instruct. The more we allow our institutions to crumble in the hands of demagogues and tyrants, the more we slip into a version of the empire, which is what George Lucas has been warning us about for nearly 40 years. Come back next week, where we're going to be looking more at politics of Star Wars and our own politics. And thanks for stopping in. Check me out on socials, and come play with me at Twitch, at twitch.tv/baby_grandma. And remember, you have the power to write your own story, so get to it.